Hi, welcome back to Bexhill West. I'm James. Now I'm aware there's not been a video for quite some time. I think it's 3 or 4 weeks since I last uploaded a video, and my apologies for that. It's simply a case of life's been very busy at the moment. And as you may recall, I'm sort of in the middle of moving home at the moment, so much of what I've been working on is packed away and I can't access it, obviously, until I've moved. And so this has made making progress difficult, but there has been progress, and today I'm going to run through what some of that progress has been and also give you a little update on the ballast vacuum system. This is now all ready to go. We'll have a little look at that, and I can show you how you could go about ordering that if that's something that's of interest to you. But I think today we'll begin by having a look at the canopy of the concourse canopy. We've seen this before lots and lots of times, and I think last time I showed you this, I can't remember whether I said it was the 5th or 6th iteration of this particular piece, and I'm sorry to say I've made it over again. I'd achieved most of what I wanted with this. The lattice work looked quite good. However, on reflection, it was all just a little bit too heavy, and so I've been spending a bit of time working with this, but trying to experiment with some other materials to try and make this sort of thing much lighter weight, and not for the weight as such, but sort of lighter and more scale-like. And with that in mind, I've been using a different material. Now this is a material called laserboard. I'll show you this up close in just a moment. And I made I think a far more appropriate frame for the concourse canopy, and that was all great, except I think it was this component here I glued in. I was sort of putting this together upside down and I glued it in the wrong way round, and didn't realise until the glue had set. So rather than take this apart, I then made another one, so I think that takes us to 7 concourse canopies, and that gave me the opportunity to refine these as well. Now these frames, they're not finished, they're just sort of bare wood glued together, but I think they could be improved, and I spent a little bit of time on those as well and improved them and made them a bit more accurate. So we'll have a look at this first version and my sort of Mark II version side by side, and hopefully you'll agree with me that where I'm going with it is much better and well worth the time that I've been putting in. But my efforts haven't just been devoted to this. You'll remember the turntable project. We'll have a look at that as well. That's something else I've been working on, and I've had a real pleasure of a trip to Robertsbridge Station and seeing this turntable, and it's really very impressive. So I've been working on that too. Maybe we'll have a little bit of a look at some of my design work for that. And I've also been thinking slightly longer term, and where this channel and where this project, the direction for it, where it might be going. And the more I think about it, the more I think there's just not enough detail in what I'm doing and things need to be improved. So we'll have a little chat about that as well, all coming up in this video. Thanks for watching. And so here we have the new station concourse canopy, and hopefully if I show you some details you'll see why I bothered to remake this. Firstly, the frame, as I'd mentioned, was rather sort of heavy section. I'd used 2 laminations of 1mm thick material to form these lattice beams, and so now I've used 2 laminations of 0.6 of a millimetre. So that's reduced 0.8 of a millimetre off of the thickness of these pieces, and I think it's noticeable. I'll show some fairly close-up photos in a minute, and I think, or I hope that you'll agree with me, it's sort of approaching close to where I would have liked to have gone if I'd used etched brass, but without the expense of etched brass, so I'm reasonably pleased with it. Now the other thing I wanted to incorporate was gutter sections between the glazed elements, and so they've been put on. These look a bit crude here because they need another coat of paint, but you get the idea. But one of the reasons why I wanted specifically to revisit what I was doing here was the ends of these glazed frames. Now I'd made them triangular when in fact they extended down beyond a triangle, and the ends were actually, I don't know if you can see this on the screen, the triangular ends come down and are sort of squared off with a little shoulder. I'll show a close-up picture of this in just a minute, and I hadn't allowed for that with the original idea that I'd come up with. So I thought I'd revisit these. Now what I've been able to do is use the same material, so these things really are now very fine. Now as it happens, I think I've put the spacing of these glazing bars too close together. They look too close together to me. Interestingly, when I compared these with the drawings for the canopies at Crowhurst Station, they are exactly right. And these were built using fairly standard components, so I'm unsure as to whether these are right or wrong, and it's very difficult to tell on old photographs. So for now they'll do, and it really would be not much work to remake those if I need to. So for the time being I won't glaze them. I'm in two minds as to how to glaze these actually. One obvious method would just be to simply paste some clear acetate onto the insides. That would work, but I think that might be a bit shiny, and when I take photos reflect and cause me all sorts of problems. I had wondered about possibly using drafting film, so the jury's still out on that, and until I need to glaze those they will remain unglazed, with the advantage that they won't collect dust either. Now then, another element that I was keen to improve on this model was the thickness of these valances. It's my intention at the end to get lots of photos under here of the finished thing, and it was clear to me that the material I'd used to make the valances on the previous attempt were far too thick, and again I've used some laser board to produce these, and I think the thickness now looks quite realistic. That's 0.6 of a millimetre thick, so it's quite fine. Sort of feels as though it's got the right sort of heaviness to it, so I'm quite pleased with how that's turned out. Now what you're looking at, all of this is just had a quick coat of paint. You can see it's not even fully covered, so this needs to be, in fact it's not even the correct shade. This is sort of in primer at the moment, but I'm now confident enough to sort of paint this up and feel certain that that's actually going to look really quite nice. So here's a shot looking underneath the canopy between the station building and the refreshment room, and as the camera pulls back you sort of start to get hopefully the feeling of light and space underneath that canopy that no doubt you would have experienced in the real thing. So I'm quite pleased with how this is developing, and I think the time spent just to reduce the thickness of those sort of ironwork sections, I think it's been well worthwhile. I'm quite pleased with how it's going so far. Now if we have a look at the back of the station, you'll see that I've not put the tiles on here yet, simply because that's such a long job, and I don't know about when exactly I'm going to be moving. I don't want to leave it halfway, so I shall save that. Probably be my first job I'll do once I've moved and I can be established and I won't get interrupted. It's the kind of thing I just want to sort of sit down and just focus on that. But anyway, there's another reason why this hasn't been tiled yet, and we'll come on to that in just a minute. But I'll just show you these. I've forgotten how many times I've been embarrassed about the chimney stacks that I'd made for Bexhill West, and I'd said, oh, these are only temporary and they're just balanced there, that's why they're all wonky, etc, etc. Well, I've had a little bit of a go at making some prototypes for some slightly better versions. Now I've still got all the mortar detail and stuff to put on, but these are now scaled correctly, and when I've got the roof on the back here tiled, I'll just be able to fettle those so that they will sit nicely. This one here seems to perpetually want to lean over, but anyway, we'll get those fitted up nicely with their LED flashings. Now, whilst we're looking at the back of the roof, there's one other addition which I've not mentioned before, and this is a little dormer, which is quite peculiar. This dormer sits on the back of the station roof, sort of, let's see if it'll balance, sort of about there really, and this provided access for a number of different reasons. There's a door obviously in here, and I guess that was there so that they could get into these valleys behind the parapet here to clean out fallen leaves or whatever it might be. It also provides quite a neat way to get out onto the clock tower should that require any maintenance. Now it's interesting, I actually went up in the roof space of this building a few weeks ago, and I plan to go again soon, and I had a look out through this door, so I'll stick a picture of that on the screen, and what you can see is a view along where the tracks would have run, and in the distance you can see the remains of the old engine shed, and it was interesting that up in this loft space here, at sort of the ground level of the loft, if that makes sense, is the clock mechanism for the clock, and I got to see that in some detail. I got to see it being wound, and that is quite interesting. It actually drives the clocks via a vertical shaft that runs up the inside of the clock tower. So I'm thinking that I might actually cut away some of this roof surface, so that when a dormer is on, it will be possible to look inside, and I might just model the clock slightly with the door of this opening just sort of slightly ajar, and anybody who's really keen could zoom in there. I think it would be possible to get a camera right in here and actually take a photo of the clock. So that's another reason why this is yet to be tiled. So what I will probably do, probably happen this week, is I'll get that opening cut, and I will form a false loft in there, which I reckon will all be dark and dingy. You won't really be able to see it, but if I get a light in here as well, it might just sort of be a little bit of interest for anybody who's really keen to study it up close.
There you go.
Hi, welcome back to Bexhill West, or more correctly, Robertsbridge Junction. Now I'm here today to have a look at the wonderful turntable that the Rother Valley Railway have just acquired. You may remember from a previous video of mine, it's my intention to build a model of it for my own setup at Bexhill West, but I also plan to build a model for the guys here at the Rother Valley Railway that they might be able to use for a visitor centre or some promotional purposes. I also intend to build one for the Ipswich Transport Museum, who very kindly provided the drawings of the turntable to the Rother Valley Railway. Anyway, that's the purpose of today's visit. Let's have a little look around and get to know the turntable just a little bit better. So the reason for the visit to Robertsbridge is to have a look at this turntable and clarify some of the details which I couldn't quite determine from the drawings that had been supplied to me. And it was very clear that one or two of the dimensions are different to those that are on the drawings, which, to be fair, were drawings of other turntables, so very similar style but minor differences in construction. So the idea was to go and have a look, confirm some of those details before I could sort of crack on with firstly my CAD model, and before ultimately building the model itself. And of course there are going to be 3 models. So my intention was to create a whole video based around my visit to Robertsbridge, but problems with the audio and stuff, hence this voiceover. So I've just thought, well, I'll condense it down and throw a few pictures in here for you to have a look at, just to get the idea of the scale of what I'm doing. It's also a great opportunity to share some nice pictures of Robertsbridge station, especially as it was a beautiful sunny day when I visited. Now, during my visit to Robertsbridge, I had the pleasure of a track walk, and one of the volunteers, Steve, showed me around the works that have been undertaken there to rebuild this historic railway station. And as we walked around, we saw some of the components of the turntable which have been stripped down, repainted, ready for reassembly. And they're currently stacked up in an area which has been designated to where the turntable pit's going to go and the new engine shed. So that was all very interesting, but it was nice to see the standard of the track work. It was really very, very impressive. And there are 5 new bridges that have been built, and all the standard of the work is really very high indeed. Now, I showed this piece of point work. This might interest some of the more nerdy among you, in as much as Steve told me that this is reputedly the longest curved piece of point work on a heritage railway anywhere in the UK. And it certainly is quite long. This photo really doesn't do it justice. It's really sort of flowing, and it's quite a piece of engineering, really. It's very impressive indeed. So that was nice to have a look at. But all of this got me thinking about gauge in general. And now I need to be careful, because I'll assemble this turntable model and the rails run along the top of the bridge beams. Now, in my own case, a double O gauge, of course, they're going to be those rails will be too close together. So that's got me thinking about gauge for the model that I will make as the display piece. And it's also made me think a little bit about gauge and track standards at Bexhill West, but we'll get into that a little bit more in a future video. But for now, that's something I need to be mindful of. Anyway, it was a wonderful trip out. Nice to have a look around the place. I'm now a fully paid up member of the Supporters Association, and I look forward to seeing the wonderful progress as they continue to make it over the coming months and years. So then, next up for today's agenda is the ballast vacuum system. I've created a stock of all of the parts, and I've now got enough that I think there's sufficient for me to put these, make these available. I could have made them available previously, but I think I would have sort of sold out and let people down. So I've got plenty here to be getting on with, and I've created an online shop. You'll be able to go on. The website is just across the bottom of the screen here, and I'll leave that web link in the video description as well. So those of you who are interested will be able to go online and pick yourself up these components. So initially it's just these that are available. There is also available, and I've shown this one previously, a kind of a laser cut version with the little valve on. To be honest with you, I think in my last video I said that that valve doesn't really make much difference, and I think, in all honesty, you're better off with this version. It's just more useful. So this would do 00, EM, whatever. In my last video I've shown it working with code 100 and code 75 track. Seems to work well. It seems to also work well on N-gauge. However, there will be an N-gauge version, so unless you're particularly keen, you're working in N-gauge, you're particularly keen to get going with this one, by all means pick yourself one up. But there will be a slightly smaller version of this coming available very soon, and that might be slightly sort of being smaller, easier to get around your track work. So that's the offer. Now I have my own setup here. Let's sort of show you what I've got here. I've connected these pieces up with 10mm PVC pipe. I'm not going to supply that because it's going to push up the packaging costs, and I really don't have I don't really have time to deal with this at all, but let alone getting into all the rest of it. So you have to find yourself a piece of 10mm PVC pipe, and it will all work with just that. However, the bit that's kind of really useful is this plastic fitting on the end, which connects to your vacuum cleaner. Now, in a previous video I showed a complete kit of mini vacuum accessories that this plastic adapter came from. It also came with a length of pipe, and I won't get them all out now, but the plastic fittings that I've adapted to fit onto here. I would recommend that you purchase one of those kits. I think they were about £6, something like that, and that will give you all the fittings you need to kind of connect this up to your vacuum cleaner, as well as all the other natty little brushes and things that come in the kit. So if you're thinking of getting into this system, my advice would be, my recommendation would be, you get one of those mini vacuum kits. Now I'll just show you my adapter here. This has got a sort of fairly crude little wooden adapter there that I've made for when I was initially experimenting with my larger cyclone separator. The reality is the vacuum cleaner nozzle just goes in the end there. This bit you don't need, that's part of a previous experiment. So your vacuum nozzle goes in there and does that. So hopefully that will be sufficient to satisfy those of you who are keen to get going with this. I cannot rate it highly enough. I think it really works a treat and it's good fun to use, and so hopefully that's of some benefit for everyone. Now I must say I'm not in this for an early retirement. I'm doing this to sort of share an idea, and it's priced as such. It's not cheap. I'm going to charge £10 for the 2 bits, which is a lot of money for a bit of plastic, but I put quite a lot of time into doing this, and I didn't know how to calculate that all out, so that was kind of a simple number, easy for me to sort of work with. That's, as far as I'm concerned, however, that's all supporting the channel. So the plan is to crack on and be producing I've got some great plans for some really great content, and as soon as the house moves out of the way, we'll get into that with sort of full steam ahead. But I didn't want this element of what I've been working on to lag behind and people be disappointed waiting for it to happen. So there you go, we've got the stock. There's actually a bit more than this. This was as much as I could get in the box. So they hopefully will be able to ship very soon. In fact, the website is up and running. You can't actually place an order on it at the time of recording this, and the reason for that is I'm just waiting for some packaging materials to turn up. So hopefully in the day or so after this video has been edited and gone live, we should have those packaging materials, and hopefully this box will be empty soon and lots of you will be busily enjoying your ballasting. That's the plan. Anyway, let's have a look at something else now. So with all of that now filmed, I've packed the station away and the refreshment room and the canopies, and the board itself is now completely wrapped up in cling film, and that's ready for storage, and we won't see this again now for a few weeks, I imagine. I don't know exactly what the moving date is, but I know that once I've moved there'll be all sorts of things to sort out, so I suspect it'll be later on in July when this all reappears and I get back into this with full gusto. Until then, I've got the turntable job for the Rother Valley Railway. That's going to occupy most of my sort of free time, and I will hopefully produce a video or two on the progress of that. I've shown you some little clips of where I'm at with it today, but maybe my next video will show that hopefully at a stage of completion, at least the CAD work being completed anyway. So I think that's it. I can't think of anything else to mention. Oh, yes, I can think of something to mention. I'm really busy with the, obviously with move and work and things like that, but it has left me a lot of time whilst I've not been able to work particularly on the model I've been creating, to give it a lot of thought to what I want to do with it. And that's been quite a powerful reflective time really. It's given me lots of ideas for not really change of direction, but a real change of quality standard. I'm sort of pleased with where I'm at so far, and it's probably as good as I'd expected it to be, but I think the time's come to really challenge myself and improve the quality and sort of stretch my own skills big time. And I think we're going to begin with looking at the track. So when we get back into this in sort of full steam, which I imagine is going to probably be towards the end of July, we'll be having a very good look at the track work and some things I could do to make real improvements there. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. It's enough rabbiting from me. I look forward to seeing you all on the next video. Take care. Cheerio.